Hey there, welcome back to Ask. Today we're going to talk about dragons and a few other good questions, so stay tuned. It's next. Welcome back, everybody. This is Ask. I'm Jamie, Pastor Jamie here at Cornerstone Church, and this is where we answer questions that you ask, usually submitted to our website. Just go to CornerstoneBV.org, go to the media page, drop down Ask, and you can submit your question. You can leave your name, but most people don't, but I encourage you to do that. The first question today about dragons comes from Pandora. And Pandora is, I think, a middle school student. I think she's in 6th grade. And so, good friend Pandora. And I mentioned that, she left her name, but I also mentioned that because Ask is a good thing to have your kids watch, maybe with you, and ask questions. And we've had, certainly over the years, questions asked, some of our best questions asked by our kids, our teens, etc. So please make sure to include them in this. Great question from Pandora about dragons, and just simply says, was there such thing as dragons, right? And so dragons are really only mentioned in the Bible as a representation of Satan, right? Especially in the book of Revelation, where Satan is called the dragon, and it's just a metaphor that Satan is compared to a fire-breathing monster, right? To help us see the severity of who Satan is. He is not going to appear, I don't believe, of course, who knows? You never know, but I don't believe he will appear as an actual dragon. But that's really the only time you see it. But if you dig a little bit deeper, there's definitely questions. Are there dragons represented in the Bible? But first, really interesting thing to note, just in archaeology and studying ancient civilizations, that stories about fire-breathing monsters that we would call a dragon are all over the place, right? They different cultures and time periods that couldn't have communicated with each other. And so that usually says, well, there was something to this, right? Because you would think that if someone just wrote and made it up, it would come from one source and then spread from there. But it's from all different sources. And so that makes certainly some scientists believe that there was an animal that is a dragon, fire-breathing monster, to some degree to what we see in our myths and legends today. Now, when you look at the Bible, really you see what many believe dinosaurs mentioned, especially in Job and what's called the behemoth, and the way that it's described. And so a lot of people think that dragons were a form of dinosaurs. Now most say, okay, there was something like that, but the fire-breathing part and some of the other elements to come along with our mythological dragon, that was never the case. But again, throughout history and civilizations, these monsters do breathe fire. So it kind of gives credence that maybe there was, and either they're extinct now or, we just don't know the answer to that. I don't think they're flying around now. I think I would have seen one by now, but who knows? Maybe I'm not paying attention. I would say this, just to kind of wrap this up. There's a lot more to this that you could read if you're interested in. And the best source for that, I think, is answersingenesis.org. Great resource for these types of topics. Dinosaurs and the beginnings, Genesis. So answersingenesis.org, and just search dragons, and there'll be some cool articles about what they think. And so if you're interested, do some research, all right? And stop asking me. I'm just kidding. Great question, Pandora. Keep them coming. Okay, second question, kind of a simple one, but still really important. The burning of sacrificial animals and offerings in the Old Testament. When it speaks of this, does it mean incense or the burning of animals, right? So I kind of blew that question, but anyway, the burnt offerings they're asking, is that animals or is that incense? And the simple answer is that it's animals, okay? Usually twice daily, there was this thing called the burnt offerings, and they were animals. There were incense that was part of the ceremony for Judaism as well, but that's not what's described as the burnt offerings. You can look at why God prescribed those to his people and read about that mostly in the book of Leviticus if you're interested, but that's the simple answer. All right, let's wrap it up with one more, and I think this is one that we all wonder about, and that is, will we recognize each other in heaven? And yes, I believe we will. But, when you dig deeper in that question, sometimes I wonder that the Bible is not completely clear on. When you look at the timeline, at least from what we can gather from the biblical scriptures, it's that we're going to, at the end, which we're not there yet, like when Jesus comes again, the culmination of all things, that he brings in the new heaven, new earth, that the resurrection of the dead will happen. And so then we are given new bodies, resurrected bodies. The only example of that we have in Scripture is Jesus himself. And so it's going to be somewhat like that. It will be physical, touching. You can touch, but they're perfected bodies. They're not going to weaken, decay, get old, sick, diseased, all that stuff, right? They're also going to be sinless. We're going to be in that perfect presence of God with our resurrected bodies, but we are going to live with those. However, we're not there yet. So if you die today as a believer, what does that look like? And we know there's some that misteach and say, well, you got to wait to the end. So they teach things like the Jehovah's Witnesses, for instance, teach something called soul sleep. Seventh-day Adventists do as well. That is wrong. Biblically speaking, we see plenty of places. Paul says, I'd rather, to be absent from the body is present from the Lord. I'd actually rather, he said, die, right? It's to gain, and the soul sleep wouldn't be to gain, right? That's, to die, that would be better off for Paul. But so we know, and also the thief on the cross, Jesus said, today you'll be with me in paradise. So we know that there is a spiritual presence in what we call heaven, but you might call paradise until Jesus makes the new heavens and the new earth. So what does that look like? And that's sometimes hard to completely understand, but I do believe there is biblical evidence to suggest, yes, we will definitely recognize each other. You think of David when his young baby that he had with Bathsheba died. He said, I will go to be with you. So you can't go be with someone unless you recognize them, right? You have, one of the interesting stories of Samuel when he's dead and Saul raises him to life. And of course, some would argue, was that really Samuel? I believe it was. And if it was, he recognized him, right? You have Moses and Elijah when Jesus is transfigured and they were recognized. They talked to Jesus. So there was a recognition there because they were, of course, dead. You have Abraham and Lazarus. You have that story. Some say that's a parable. I don't think it is. So they recognize each other. So I think while, it isn't just overt in the scriptures, that we certainly have every reason to believe, yes, we will recognize each other for the time being. And then certainly when we're given our resurrected bodies, they will be different, much better, but we'll be able to recognize each other. So that's awesome. Something to look forward to. But the biggest thing to look forward to is we're going to recognize Jesus, right? So let's remember that. All right, that's all we have time for today. Lots of questions coming in. If you ask one and you're like, where's the answer to my question? You just got to wait a little bit, but I'll get to it. So keep submitting your questions at CornerstoneBV.org. Sign up for one of our 3 services this weekend. We'd love to see you in person or join our 11 a.m. Online gathering as well. God bless. Have a great week.